G'day guys, Mackie with the Outer Circle, and today I want to talk a little bit about what's really been bugging me with the fluff, the lore of 40k lately. I was watching a video today on the Warhammer community site that I was linked by a friend, talking about how, with Phil Kelly and some other bloke, I can't remember his name, but he worked on the Gathering Storm books and all that, and seems to be their new go-to writer for a lot of this stuff. And I couldn't help but feel that they were really missing the point with their sales pitch. Now, hear me out here, because I do expect to cop a lot of flack for this, because fanboys, and I have to use that term, don't have a fucking critical brain cell anywhere inside their skull. And they can't look at the merits of an argument and say, okay, you make a fair point about this. Instead, they just go, no, the lore's fine, it's perfect, it's fine, it's great. Anything Games Workshop does is great. I love all their fluff, I love all their lore. And there's also another group that don't care for the lore, and that group's fine. I don't need them to announce to me, though, each time that, I don't care about the lore, because, great, that doesn't help me in any way, shape, or form. But, with the lore, let's look at it this way. When most narratives are written, most stories, it's what we call a 3-act structure. So you have the first act is like your introduction. This where you get to know your characters, events unfold, the story is laid out before you. The second act is what they call the darkness. Well, that's what I will call it in this stage. And that's the low point, where your characters face their dilemmas, the struggles they've got to overcome, and objects are placed in the path before them. Finally, your narrative finishes with the third act, which is the conclusion, where the characters rise up from the darkness, overcome the struggles, get around the obstacles placed before them, and the story is able to conclude itself in a meaningful way. With 40k currently, the Space Marine is supposed to be in the middle of the second act still. Guilliman's rise is part of overcoming an obstacle. It is not having overcome an obstacle. That said, the way that it's being portrayed is very much that third act. The Imperium is supposedly a regressive society. Their technology has stagnated. They aren't inventing new things. Things that were once considered technology are almost becoming arcane because people are losing the ability to understand them. And that lack of understanding is part of what's, again, pushing them further into the Dark Ages. It's a play on, the fall of classical Rome and the decline into the Dark Age and the medieval period before the Renaissance. Now, Guilliman's representing a form of Renaissance with his return, but that doesn't work. Because, again, you've got Guilliman, despite having power and influence, anyone who tries to invent anything is a pariah in this society. They're like scientists were, to the Catholic Church in the 1500s, suggesting that, the universe doesn't revolve around the Earth. And, these people were killed for these beliefs. And Guilliman just comes along one day, along with Belisarius Cawl, and they just clap their hands, and all of a sudden, bam, new technology, new Marines, new this, new that. It doesn't feel right. So, you know what I mean? Like, this may be fantasy setting, but this is the background that's been built up for it, that if you try and do something crazy with technology, you'll be persecuted for it. And not only are these guys doing crazy things, but they're doing them, and doing them fast. Now, that's what's ruffling people's feathers with the fluff. I'm not trying to be rude here towards Games Workshop at all. I'm just saying that people are upset with the fluff for the Primaris Marines because it's just happened. All that darkness of the Imperium, the regressive tech. If they can do this, if they can bring about these new Marines with such ease, apparent ease, then is the Imperium really in such a stagnant state? Some will argue yes, some will argue no. Now, if you're looking at this and you're trying to have that second act, the darkness that's got to be overcome, right? The low point for the characters, the struggles. Yes, there's a map showing the Imperium, right, and how it's been split in half and there's warp storms appearing all over the place. That's fine. You're telling us that this is happening. But again, you're not showing us new things. And I'm not talking about new sculpts for Nurgle Marines, right? Okay, cool. There's a whole bunch of new Plague Marines. I'll even put some up on screen right now. There you go. There are new Plague Marine sculpts. But they're still just the same old Plague Marines. Nurgle are getting special Nurgle Terminators. Mortarians coming back. Great, that's inventing stuff. But we're seeing Marines. Half a dozen new types of Marines. New Marine Commanders. We're seeing these Herald guys. We're seeing Lieutenants. We're seeing Gravious Armoured Captains. We're seeing new vehicles in the form of a crazy new land speeder tank. Now, I'm not saying I'm against the change, against these things. Not at all, right? But what I'm saying is, all these new things come along, but then you go over and you see Chaos with all these old things. And I'm not saying this is a Chaos fanboy or anything like that. What I'm trying to point these things out to you is because if you're going to have a meaningful threat, that threat has to be more dangerous than you are, and demonstrably so, right? So I'm going to try and use some analogies here to get this point home, because this is something people consistently forget, right, or miss the point of when they look at our videos. And before, the dislikes and likes ratio skews way out of control. Let's pretend this is Star Wars, right? Pretty much everyone who plays Warhammer has probably seen Star Wars. So if you have Star Wars, and the Imperium is the Rebel Alliance, right? And on the other side, you've got Chaos, or Tyranids, or Orcs, whoever you like can be the Imperium. The Imperial faction in Star Wars, the Empire. They've got a Death Star. The Rebels don't. That's a threat. But if the Rebels have Starkiller Base, is the Death Star such a threat anymore? It's not, is it? Well, that's what 40k is right now. The Imperium has new technology, new armor, new, more stronger, more powerful Marines, and their enemies aren't getting these same, it may happen in future, but the thing is, it has to happen beforehand, because again, you've got to bring your characters down, bring them to their low point. You can't bring in the threat, the menace to the Imperium after the fact. Stories don't work like that. You see, by the time that happens, you've lost the ace up your sleeve. So the only way you can really bring your fluff back at this point is to bring in a threat that's so grave, so dire, that the Primaris Marines, just when they're faced with it, they can't overcome it. Stories about planets that are entirely demon cages and things, that's lame. No. You see, we're in a state right now where we're being told that chaos is everywhere, they're ransacking the Imperium. But when we are actually shown stories that are fleshed out, they focus on the Imperium themselves and successes that they're having. How they're pushing back chaos, how they're winning offensives. So you're not demonstrating that threat. You're not demonstrating that the Imperium is on the back foot here. In fact, you're showing them overcoming their obstacles. And if they're overcoming their obstacles, where is the threat? If there's no threat, the story isn't compelling. If you don't have a compelling story, what happens next? Who knows? Maybe people leave your story. Maybe people don't care about it, and they're happy with the way things are. Maybe some people don't give a shit. They're into bad storytelling. Probably the same people who like the Transformers series of movies. But, here we are. I've tried to explain this in a nice, simple way. Again, another Star Wars analogy. You have a battle, let's say, Battle of Endor. And all of a sudden, all those Star Destroyers, a whole bunch of Mon Calamari ships appear on the Rebel side, an extra 100 Mon Calamari cruisers. You'd be like, holy crap, that's a lot of Mon Calamari cruisers, right? Well, same thing. What if on Battle of Hoth, instead of, 5 AT-ATs walking towards the Rebel position, the Rebels had a Mon Calamari cruiser, a blockade runner, just sitting there in orbit. Maybe the ion cannon just pointed downwards and just shot at them and blew them all away. No threat, right? If there's no threat, there's nothing to compel you in the story. And you can apply this to anything. What if you're watching The Lord of the Rings? Everyone knows, again, if you play Warhammer, you've probably seen The Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. if the 10,000 Uruk-hai that attacked Helm's Deep faced against 20,000 Rohirrim at Helm's Deep, would that be a compelling threat? No, it probably wouldn't, right? Same thing again. If you have any sort of character and the person they're fighting is just inferior to them, then you're not going to be invested in the fight, are you? I mean, that's not to say you can't have cool things happen, but are you going to be drawn to that character? Because the thing is, with humans, we like to see people overcome adversity. What draws people to Space Marines is not just the fact that Marines are cool, right? Because Marines are cool. It's the fact that they're heroes. They're fighting a losing battle and they're winning battles along the way. They're doing what they can to survive. That's great stuff. The minute you take that away from them, though, that, you know, they've got superior gear, they've got superior technology, they've got new technology, and you're not, you know, demonstrating an opposite threat to that, a juxtaposition, if you will, then what's the point of it? There is no point. So yeah, that's why people are having problems with 8th edition Fluff. It's not the fact that there's an 8th edition, it's not the fact that they've changed rule sets, it's not the fact that Cadia fell, anything like that, no. It's little things. Like when Cadia fell, it wasn't because of superior Chaos tactics, it wasn't because they introduced crazy new war machines into the field, which they really should be. That should have in fact been how they went. They should have probably looked after Chaos or Necrons or some other faction that threatened the Imperials, that forced them to go down the route of Primaris Marines. It wasn't because of that. Instead it was because they just crashed a Blackstone fortress into Cadia. Well, brilliant move right there. It's something the Orcs would do, just crash a big fucking rock into a planet, right? So, again, Chaos is not winning points on generalship. They're not winning points on new war gear, new technology, right? They haven't got the same inspiring presence of commanders in the field because, sure, you're adding Mortarion and Magnus into the mix, but Mortarion and Magnus as Demon Primarchs are being used as plot points. They're just there so you have a named character that Gilliman can just slap around. And I'm not saying that he's like slapping them around in a comical way, but I'm just saying that's exactly what they're there for. It doesn't have to be Magnus or Mortarion. You could replace them with one of their lieutenants. It could be Araman or Typhus. It doesn't even have to be them. It could be unnamed Demon Prince number 4, background character 8. At the end of the day, it's just Chaos Guy has convoluted schemes. Gilliman foils schemes. Next story. And that's why it's not compelling people currently. That is where the Fluff is going wrong, in my opinion. Anyway, thoughts and comments below. Fanboys, fill your fucking boots about why I'm wrong, about how character development works, and maybe you can tell everyone who's ever written a novel or made a movie why they're wrong as well while you're at it. So, passive-aggressive statement to close my video. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.